Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Beneath the Silence, Healing the Wounds of Betrayal Trauma. A warm welcome to all of you who have been watching or listening to the podcast in the past, and also a warm welcome if this is your first podcast that you're listening to. I'm Sandy Joy, and I am really glad that you're here. So, just as a reminder, especially for those who may be new, that I don't edit these podcasts. I like them to be real, raw, authentic, and vulnerable. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to stumble over words or four of them, and that's it. It's because real life is real and we're not perfect human beings. So that's my little spiel. Today's podcast is on workplace betrayal trauma and what that might look like. And so the title is Workplace Betrayal Trauma, Whistleblowing, Harassment, Discrimination, Racism, Violence, and the Cost of Speaking Up. I've got a little raspy throat today, so I apologize for that. Um, so, workplace betrayal trauma, what is it? It's a form of trauma that is often minimized, normalized, and framed as just part of the job, yet can be profoundly destabilizing. And many people don't even realize that they've experienced it. It's just they don't have a choice they have to go to work, and it's put up and shut up kind of thing. So episode is for anyone who has spoken up as a whistleblower and paid the price, experienced harassment, discrimination, or racism at work. And harassment doesn't have to be just, sexual harassment. It absolutely can be. But this harassment can be being the brunt of jokes, comments made about one's weight, about what one looks like, one's intelligence. That they're all forms of harassment, and they're not acceptable. Okay? It's for people who have been subjected to intimidation, retaliation, or workplace violence. And if you have watched my episodes on intimate partner violence or perpetrator violence, violence can be with words. It does not have to be hands-on physical. It can be with words. It is violence is anything that evokes fear. That means the behavior towards that person who is fearful is violent. Okay. This episode is also for anyone who has discovered that the system meant to protect them. So your bosses, etc., instead cause the harm, right? They have suspended you or demoted you, or you were up for a promotion and now you're no longer up for the promotion. There's many aspects in which they can cause harm. Okay. Workplaces are not just places of employment, they are systems of power, dependency, and survival for many people, especially in this day and age. We often need, you know, two incomes to be able to survive, and it's awful. Just the state of our world right now. It's traumatic in itself. When harm occurs within those systems and accountability fails, betrayal trauma can take root or has taken root. Okay. As always, listen at your own pace, pause if you need to. Your safety matters, you matter, so please look after yourself first and foremost. Okay. So, what is workplace betrayal? Named a few things, but it occurs when a person depends on an organization, and that can be a mom and pop organization, right? It can be only, one employee, you, but you depend on that organization for income, safety, identity, and stability and or stability. Yet it's when harm occurs within that system. And that can even be expecting you to work long hours, but you're only paid for 8, but you're working 10 or 12 hours, and expecting you to be working those, but you're not being paid for those hours, okay? And the institution responds with denial, punishment, minimization, or retaliation. I'll just fire you. Okay? That's a labor board then issue. And if there is any, um, objectification, racism, sexism, etc., that's also a human rights issue. Right? So this is not just stress. This is relational and institutional trauma. Okay, so it's individual betrayal trauma, but as well as institutional betrayal trauma. And if this happens within a culture, okay, and that can be an ethnic culture, that could be one of the marginalized groups, or that could be a culture of, say, firefighting or policing, right? So it's where your colleagues are joining in on this minimization and punishment and retaliation. That's also cultural betrayal. Okay. So unlike isolated conflict, workplace trauma involves power imbalances, threats to livelihood, silencing, and fear of retaliation. And for many, leaving is not immediately possible. How do you pay your bills? How do you keep the roof over your head and food on your table? You know, if you're not able to continue working. So for many people, leaving is not possible in the immediacy or in the near future, okay? Financially, professionally, or emotionally. So what is whistleblowing? So whistleblowing and retaliation. So whistleblowers are often framed as difficult, disloyal, or troublemakers. So what what whistleblowing is, excuse me. Yeah. I hope I'm not coming down with something. Just with the throat the way it is. Although it's not sore, it's just scratchy, hoarse. Um, what whistleblowing is somebody who is noticing that there is unethical or potential harm that is happening, within the workplace. So I'm going to use policing for this because you can search online for whistleblowing police officers and things that have happened. Okay, so I'm going to use policing just as an example. Let's say a police officer, has witnessed a colleague being unethical with a potential suspect. Either the way they are treating them in a racist way, or sexually harassing them, or threatening them, or physically abusing, how they are. Think of the George Floyd, incident, okay? And the whistleblower goes to their superior and said that this is what I saw. This is what is happening. And it's not just, the first time it's happened. And the whistleblower is then framed as difficult, disloyal, a troublemaker. I'm going to give you another example that may be I'm going to use a factory setting. Maybe there is something happening with a product that is then going to the middleman and before the end user, but it can actually, whatever is happening with the product can actually cause harm to either the middle person, like the wholesaler, or the end user. And again, it's unethical and there can be, tremendous harm, but it could be cost cutting, right? Saving money. And the person who's noticing that this is not right, this can cause harm to multiple people, or as the products are going out, and they go to their supervisor and say, this is what I'm noticing. And they are told, oh, don't worry about it, I'll look after that. And nothing is done. So they keep noticing it's happening, goes to the supervisor again, and then they're told that they're troublemakers. They may even go to their supervisor's boss. And next thing you know, they're called into HR and they've lost their job. That's a whistleblower. Okay. Again, that can be depending on whether there is discrimination around disability, or where it may be a human rights, but definitely a labor board issue. Okay. So whistleblowers often framed as difficult, disloyal, or troublemakers. But research consistently shows that whistleblowers are often people with strong ethics and integrity. They're noticing that this isn't right, what's happening, and they speak up. The betrayal occurs when harmful or unethical behavior is reported and the organization prioritizes reputation over safety. The whistleblower then is punished, marginalized, and or fired. This creates a devastating double bind. Stay silent and violate your values. So that's moral injury, which I've done a podcast on moral injury, or speak up and risk your livelihood. And how do you put food on the table for your family or keep a roof over your head? And it's really, really difficult. The trauma is not just what is witnessed, it's what happens after speaking up and speaking the truth. So, harassment, discrimination, and racism. Workplace betrayal trauma is especially severe when harm is sexual harassment, and this can be touch, comments, or comments made of a sexual connotation, including sexually explicit jokes. Not funny. And even if it wasn't directed, and I'm just going to use, because misogyny is very real, objectification of women is very real. It's the, old boys club, or, locker room talk. Whether it's done in front of a woman or not, it is still sexual harassment in the workplace. Okay. And if, sexually explicit jokes are not funny, they're not for the workplace. My ex would do this all the time. Okay. Workplace betrayal trauma is especially severe when harm is harassment, and these are statements, whether framed as joking or not, about a person's appearance or weight. It can also be statements made about a person's inability or ineptitude that are lies. Right? Trying to say this person's not good at their job, I had to help them out all the time, when the actual reverse is actually true. That is harassment in the workplace, and it must be stopped. Gender-based discrimination. And often the gender-based discrimination are those minimized populations. So gender-based is often those who are women, or those who identify as women, or those in the LGBTQ community, or those who are transgendered, whether that's a transgendered man or a transgendered woman. Okay. It's gender-based discrimination. It can happen in the workplace where racial discrimination is present, or racism is present. Again, whether that is through jokes or statements, whether in front of the person or not. It is unacceptable, and it is betrayal. It's workplace betrayal. It's also about ableism, homophobia, transphobia. So things I mentioned in in gender-based discrimination. And I'm going to discuss when I talk about ableism, because many people think those who are disabled cannot do anything or cannot do many things. Okay. And yet we all have gifts and we all have talents and we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. And no one is great at every single thing. I suck at IT, at technology. It is my nemesis. I struggle. I struggle. I struggle. I'm learning and teaching myself, you know, but I struggle. It is just not my jam, and I strongly dislike it. This I like. I like talking to people. I love helping people. That I know I'm really, really good at. I can help people. And so this talking I can do. I can do, research if I get to share it with others. Because just doing research on its own, I don't like doing. I'm not a big writer, but I do it when there is a purpose. Anyway, I digress. Going back to the word dis and how it affects ableism or the prefix dis. Dis is a prefix that means no or not. So think of disagree. We do not agree. Disapprove. We do not approve. Disabled means not able. Many of you do not know this. I used a power wheelchair actually for 14 and a half years. In 10 of those years, I had every aspect of assistance of daily living. I'm not going to get into my story right now, but every aspect of assistance of daily living, somebody to help me out of bed, bathe, toilet, transfer, you name it. I could brush my teeth, I could feed myself, I could wash myself. If I was helped onto the bath bench, the water ran or the shower ran, I could do those things. Um, but it was the mobility component of getting, in and out and couldn't bend over to, take off clothes and that kind of stuff. I just didn't have the strength or the dexterity to do it. So um, I hated the word disability because it took away all the things that I could do. And so I coined a phrase or a term called diff-ability, Diffability, diff-ability, because we all have different abilities, but that's what they are. And it speaks to where our gifts are, where our strengths are. And we all have that, and how we use our strengths to help others. And whether that's in someone in IT, I am so thankful for people who are in IT because I just don't, it just doesn't compute in here. Um, and that's how we work together as a society, as populations, as worlds. We all bring our strengths, and that's what we can focus on rather than what people can't do. When I used my wheelchair, I used to ask people, do you think I could run? I was in a power wheelchair. And they would say, oh, no, no, you can't run. Yeah, I can. I just put it up to fourth speed and I can run 12 kilometers an hour. How fast can you run? Just because I was sitting in the chair, the wheels were acting as my legs. So I could run just differently. So ableism is looking at really what people can't do rather than all the gifts and the strengths that they have. Okay? So in these cases, the betrayal is layered. There can be personal harm, systemic harm, and cultural silencing, as I talked about. So when I mean in these cases, I mean the sexual harassment, the other harassment, gender-based discrimination, racial discrimination or racism, and ableism, homophobia, and transphobia. In these cases, the betrayal is layered. There is personal harm, so it's individual betrayal. Systemic harm, which is the institutional betrayal if the organization doesn't do anything. And then cultural silencing, depending on what that might look like. When reports are dismissed or reframed as misunderstandings, personality conflicts, not enough evidence, or statements such as, oh, he was just an old man, he doesn't know any better, you know, or, well, he's going to retire soon, or, you know, just ignore him. That's just the way he is or she is, right? The survivor learns my safety matters less than their comfort. And this is not just injustice, it is trauma. It is trauma. So, what is workplace violence and threat? What does that look like? Because it doesn't always look dramatic. It can include threats or intimidation, okay? Coercive supervision. So, what do I mean by that? That could mean I told you to do this way right now. No discussion. Shut up and put up. Even if what they're told to do is unethical, goes against ethics or safety. Bullying. Yeah, you know that holiday you wanted to take off? It's going to be denied. Okay. Chronic psychological aggression. That can be gaslighting, manipulation. And that can be any of the others that is mentioned. So just as I discussed about intimate partner violence or perpetrator violence, this violence most often is not physical, causing someone to raise their hand in anger. It is subtle and made through intimidation, threats, comments made that instill fear. It's the gaslighting and manipulation. This fear can consist of fear of physical harm. It can be fear of losing one's job. It can be fear of losing one's ability to gain promotions. When leadership fails to intervene or is the source of the harm, the workplace becomes unsafe at a nervous system level. And employees remain hypervigilant, sometimes dissociated or collapsed, which is a form of dissociation, not because they are weak, but because danger is ongoing. So, like I said in the podcast last week about how betrayal trauma it doesn't have uh, an end per se. It is ongoing for over days, weeks, months, and often years. And that's the same with workplace betrayal. So why does workplace betrayal hit so hard? Workplaces often provide that financial survival, identity and purpose, social belonging, professional reputation. When betrayal occurs, the nervous system loses safety. The future becomes uncertain and feels uncertain. Self-doubt sets in. And many survivors ask, why didn't I leave sooner? Or why didn't I fight harder? Well, because there was these very real fears of losing your job. And what, if you were fired, what would that do to your reputation, your professional reputation? Okay. Why didn't I fight harder? Sometimes it's easier and safer to leave quietly. Especially if you're working with someone who may have narcissistic tendencies. If there has been threats and you feel completely unsafe. It doesn't mean that you can't seek out legal advice about what you can do for your future and what that might look like. Survivors may ask, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me that I put up with that? Okay, nothing is wrong with you. Betrayal trauma explains why awareness, action, and escape are often constrained by survival needs. So what can you do? First is validation. This is not your fault. Any form of betrayal trauma is not your fault. The fault lies on the person who is the perpetrator of the betrayal or perpetrators of the betrayal. You did not imagine it, and your reaction makes sense. You're in survival. So practical and emotional steps is document everything when safe. So that may even be when you get home from work. Even if it's on your way home, you're dictating into your phone as you're driving. Although I don't really suggest that because it can be very emotional and it can be distracting. And then if you're driving, that may not be safe. But maybe you drive to a park before you get home and you voice record it, as a way to document it. Or dictate it into your notes on your phone, or when you get home, on your laptop, if you can open a Word document and dictate it into a Word document that you can save. It's seeking trauma-informed support, and it's best if it is betrayal trauma informed. So even though it's trauma-informed, I always suggest getting someone who is trauma certified. It's best. And if they have betrayal trauma training, that's even better. Okay. Consult legal or advocacy resources if appropriate. And when I say if appropriate, if it's appropriate for you. No pressure for you to do anything other than what you've, already have done if you've left or whatever the case may be. Work on rebuilding that internal trusting yourself, and name what happened, publicly or privately. Name it on your terms. It is betrayal trauma, and it can, involve institutionalized betrayal trauma, and it can also involve cultural betrayal. You can experience all three at the same time. And an important reminder, leaving a workplace does not mean you failed. It means they did. Staying does not mean you consented, or you continue to consent, or you consent at all in any way, shape, or form. Healing is not about proving harm. It's about restoring safety. And so I talked about internal and external safety in last week's podcast. And you may, if you haven't watched that, you may want to watch that to help you learn how to restore safety. So in closing, workplace betrayal trauma is real. It happens every single day in many, many workplaces. It is not a weakness, and it is not just work stress. When systems punish truth, protect harm, or silence survivors, their injury is profound, and so is the capacity to heal. You deserve safety, dignity, and respect. And your story matters. You matter. So 3 takeaways from today is workplace betrayal trauma occurs when systems prioritize power and reputation over people and safety. Retaliation, dismissal, and silencing compound harm and deepen trauma. Healing involves validation, safety restoration, and reclaiming internal authority. That's reclaiming yourself. So I want to thank you for joining me today on Beneath the Silence, Healing the Wounds of Betrayal Trauma. Remember that healing is possible even from the deepest, darkest, cavernous places and wounds. If this episode resonated with you, please let me know. Leave a comment or send me an email, sandy@sandrajoy.ca. And in an actual fact, I'm just going to ask you, please reach out to me. Let me know how you're finding these podcasts, or if there's one that stands out for you, or if you have any suggestions for podcasts that you would like to learn more about in the future or hear about in the future. Please reach out to me. Okay? If you'd like more resources or support, You can visit me at sandrajoy.ca. And of course, those interested in taking my betrayal trauma course, you can also find that on my website. And it's about reaching out to me so we can set a date um, or dates. It's 12 hours, so it's over 2 days. And if you're able, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like and share the podcast so that others may learn and find community. Subscribing to my YouTube channel and liking and sharing builds the algorithm so other people can find the information on betrayal trauma. And it's really important that others don't feel so alone. And I can understand if you don't feel comfortable, sharing. That's perfectly fine. If you're able to subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be wonderful, and I would really appreciate it. Again, I don't earn any money from this. Yeah, I think you have to have something like 500 or 1,000 subscribers um, before you even can possibly get a sponsor. Like and I can't imagine. I mean, I just started in September, but I can't imagine what that will look like. Anyway. So, next week, what I'm going to talk about is parenting through betrayal trauma, which includes being a parent of adult children, not just minor children, but adult children. Okay. And until next time, until next time, take gentle care of yourself and always remember, I see you, I hear you, and I believe you. Until we meet again. Thank you.